Alright, welcome folks to another episode of Chinese history. So in this video, I'm going to discuss how ancient Chinese prostitutes used birth controls back thousands of years ago. It's going to be a little bit dark and disturbing. These women, they were truly oppressed and they were left with no choice. Thousands of years ago, these whorehouses, whatever you want to call them, prostitution centers, the ancient Chinese strip clubs. They have always been around since the beginning of time, throughout all of China's 5,000 year history. And so way back before they had birth control, obviously condom wasn't invented until much later in history. So when it was that around that time of the month when the woman was menstruating, usually she would get a few days off of work in order to avoid pregnancy. And sometimes this would not always be possible. So what ended up happening is that there were odd times where the woman would get pregnant through her work. And this is long before the age of abortion. So what would happen is the head of the brothel, usually they would commit child infanticide. Yes, you heard it right. Child infanticide. Sometimes they would just smash the baby's head on the ground, or they would impale it with a spear, or there were cases where they showed a bit of a mercy. They would simply leave the baby in a basket along with a note and send it flowing down the river until some caring couple will pick it up. And obviously, one of the earliest forms of birth control was telling the guy to pull out, right? This is actually 80% effective. Ladies, listen, if you made some bad decisions, right, and it comes down to that point where you're already having unprotected sex, that's the least you can do. Obviously not as effective as, using a condom or being on birth control, or just, keep your legs closed. And one of the things they also did way back then, sometimes these women, they will stick honey up their vagina, up their private parts. Yes, this really did happen. So the whole point of the honey, and you have to remember, this was thousands of years ago. I know it sounds a little bit insane. The honey was there to stop the sperm's travel up the fallopian tube all the way into the woman's ovaries. And I don't know how effective this was, but honestly, back then they had very few choices. And one of I think the most disturbing methods that they used was the poison, by using mercury and arsenic. Now, China has had a very long dark obsession with both mercury and arsenic. There were many emperors throughout Chinese history that tried to mix these things with a bunch of other insane ingredients in order to create the elixir of immortality. What's very interesting about mercury and arsenic, it was one insane Chinese guy's obsession with mixing these in order to create the elixir of immortality. Obviously, that never happened, but this is actually how the Chinese created the gunpowder. And that's for a separate video. I will bring that up as well. But the invention of gunpowder by the Chinese, that literally backfired in so many ways. The Chinese got bent over by the European powerhouses, by the British during the two Opium Wars, by the Portuguese, by the Japanese, by the French, by the Germans. Yeah, it's quite interesting, even though the fact that it was the Chinese that created the gunpowder, they really fell behind during the Industrial Revolution, and they were completely torn apart by other colonial powers throughout the world. But back to the topic of birth control, what these prostitutes did way back then was they would take these mercury and arsenic in micro doses. Now, this actually worked. As I mentioned in previous videos about ancient Chinese punishments, so a bottle of arsenic was given as a way of mercy killing way back in the day if someone committed a heinous crime. But the emperor decided to show a tiny bit of mercy. Instead of beheading them, they want to have their entire body preserved. As a last bit of dignity, they were given a vial of arsenic. And if you were to drink that vial, death would be guaranteed within less than 2 hours. But sometimes what happens is, if you take trace amounts, just tiny bit of mercury and arsenic at a time, it begins to slowly poison your body. And I think what it actually does is that it makes you infertile, because the use of mercury and arsenic was very common back in the Chinese imperial harem. It was an insane place because you got all these women, thousands, sometimes 10, 20, 30,000 women, and they were all insanely jealous of each other. They all want to have sex with the emperor in order to get impregnated by him, and they want to give birth to the son, so they can become the emperor's dowager. So what will happen is sometimes during these insane Cold War battles, these rivalries that happens in the harems, sometimes these concubines, they will secretly poison each other's food. They could just, with micro doses of mercury and arsenic, they put a tiny little bit of in your rice every day. They put a tiny little bit in your pork, in your chicken, in your soup. And obviously nothing would happen. You wouldn't feel sick as you're eating it because it's micro doses. But if you're going to digest this poison every day for the next, let's say 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, you're guaranteed to be infertile. And what happens is, once the emperor, he has slept with you 10, 20, 30 times, you're still not getting pregnant. And that's when you stop receiving attention. You get sent to the cold palace. And other concubines, that's when they get their chances. So this is what the Chinese prostitutes did way back in ancient China. It was an absolutely insane time. These women really, really suffered, along with other insane methods like the food binding. Thank you guys for staying till the end. I'll see you in the next video.